So every short fill is a technician leaving the warehouse without what they need. And so short fill rate percent shows how often your inventory is slowing down, your inventory operation is slowing down the field. And so if you want higher first time fix rates and fewer return visits, then watch this video because this KPI matters. And so what we have here is just a simple heat map with the target cell. So anything above this is gonna turn red. Right. And so you can just sort of see like, hey, control boards in August had a pretty high, short fill rate. And so let's get started here. So here you have a data set, and I'm sure you've seen something like this a million times, but this is pretty in depth for this video because you can get a lot of KPIs, and I work with a bunch of HVAC guys, and so I'm sort of familiar with what the data looks like. And so I also understand that this is the hardest part. Getting the data structured in a format is the hardest part of everything. But assuming you have this, then we can get you can work from this. But if you want this file, there's a link to download it. So for this video, all we need is the request date. Because we're going to be doing this by month, we need the parts category, and then we need requested quantity and filled quantity. So with your data, if you have those 4 columns, then you're good. And so on this tab, we only need to do one formula, and we just want to get the end of the month for this month. That way we can create this. And you can also strip it out. You could have January 2026. You could have 2 columns if you wanted. But for this one, I'm just going to do 1 column. So to get the end of the month, there's a function called EOMONTH, end of the month. And then highlight the cell that has the date, comma, and then 0. 0 is going to give you the end of the month from the cell, so the end of January. If you did 1 instead of 0, it would give you the end of February, so on and so forth. And so you can see here, it's formatted as a number, but you can see that it's a date. Okay, so we have that. I'm going to delete this because we don't need it because we already have it. And so the next thing we need to do is we need to get a unique list of the month and then a unique list of the parts. And then we're going to do overall. So to get a unique list of the month, we just do unique and then go into the data set, and then you can highlight this. And then you can see you get everything here. And then we can just call this month, or you can call it date, whatever you want. And then I'm going to center this. And then I'm going to Control C and then Control Shift V to remove the formula. And then just format it as a date. And then the next thing we need is we want the unique for the table. And then you can see it's going to be the part category here. So because it's in a table, we don't have to go back to the other tab to highlight the columns. But we have that here. And then we want to sort this alphabetically. So we're going to wrap this with a sort function. And then we want it to be across the row and not in the columns. So we're going to use the TRANSPOSE function. And so now you can see it's exactly sort of how we want it. Okay, again, you can see that the little box around the dynamic range. So copy it and then Control Shift V to paste it. Okay, so now we need to sum. We need to sort of, work through this. How do we get this percentage? So if we do the sum of filled quantity by, the month and by the part, and then divide that by the sum of the requested quantity, what we're going to get is the fill rate. But we want 1 minus that. So if the fill rate's 87%, we want 1 minus that to get the shortfall rate, because that's going to be a little bit more useful. So to do that, we want to sum the filled rate, or the filled quantity, if the parts quantity is below or if the month is January 31st. So sum if s. So the month is B3 and the part is C2. So sum the filled quantity, comma, where the month, comma, is B3. Remember, it was B3. And then the parts category, comma, is C2. Right? So we have that number here, 1302. So that's the numerator, the top. So this is how many parts were filled, but how many were requested. And so all we have to do there is just highlight this and then divide and paste. So highlight, copy, and then divide and paste by the same thing. And then here you can see there is a requested quantity. And so now you get a percentage, right? So 92%, but we don't want that. We want 1 minus that. So because this is dividing, you don't need to put brackets because it's going to divide before it subtracts. So we have that here. So this is the number you want. Okay, so now we want to drag this over and drag this down, but what you'll notice is we can't. And the reasoning is because the cells aren't locked, meaning this is on blower parts here, but now it's moving down. So we need to lock that. We need to lock the rows and the columns. So this is currently it's called relative referencing. It's all relative. You drag it down, the formula is going to come down with it. You drag it over, the formula is going to go over as well. So we need to lock cells. So wherever you want to lock the column, so as you drag it over, it doesn't change, but as you drag it top to bottom, it does. You need to put a $sign before the column, right? And that's the letter in Excel. And then you need to put the $sign for the row before the number and after the column. So in other words, before the row, you want to lock the row. So you put the $sign before the row. You want to lock the column, you put the $sign before the column because column B, right? You don't say column 2, you don't say row B, right? Because rows are numbers and columns are letters. Okay, so you press enter, and then you can, again, you're not going to be able to drag it because it's a table, but what you can do is you can copy and paste it like that. And so that's what we want. And that's pretty much how you do it. So the rest is just, just some pretty basic, conditional formatting and stuff like that. But we also want to get 2 overalls columns. So what this column is going to be is what was your shortage by month, for each month here. And then this is what is your shortage by part here. So you can do either one. We can use the exact same formula. The difference is, because this is for the parts, we can just strip out anything with the month. So we just need to find where there's the month and just delete everything. Sort of like that. And then the red here. And then you can delete that. And then again, copy and paste it over. Don't drag it over. Control-Shift-5. And now you have the percentage. And then for this, same concept, but instead of deleting the month, we're going to delete the part. So right here, we can just delete the part category. Here, delete, and then close your bracket. And then here, same thing. You can just delete everything up until including the comma. Control-Shift-5. We can add a decimal. With this one, you can actually drag it down. It's because as you drag things down, columns don't change. It's as you drag them over, the table changes. Okay, and then finally, you might want this, and this is just an overall for the whole data set. And we're not going to use SUMIFS, we're going to use sum, because we want to sum the requested, or sum the filled, divide by the requested. So sum the filled quantity, so sum table filled quantity, close your bracket, divided by sum table requested quantity, close your bracket, and then we need to do 1 minus that. Control-Shift-5 and add a decimal. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want the target cell. Say it's 6%, but we want to have to the tenths decimal. We want to have an extra decimal, so we can do 5.5, 6.5. Okay, so we have this here, and then what we want to do is we want to highlight everything, hold down Control, highlight this, go to Home, Conditional Formatting, highlight cells greater than, and then click on the percentage. And yeah, now you have changing cells that are going to automatically update. And so the last thing is we want to name this. So if you do this with your team and you're sharing it with anybody, they might not understand that this is a changing cell. So we can add text inside. So say, for example, you want it to say target 10.0%. It's going to break everything. And the reason is because this is text and you can't compare numbers to text. So we want to have, 10%, but we want it to say target, but still be read as text. And so just press Control-1, be in that cell, and then press Control-1 to bring up the formatted cell dialog box, and then go to custom. And then here, make sure it's 0.0%, the cell you're on, or the sort of the category. And then you need your quotations, type in the word target, colon, space, quotations, enter. And now you have a changing cell that will automatically update based on whatever percentage you want it to be. And then you can do something here if you want, you can bold it or something, because this is overall. But anyways, so that's it. That's all I got for this one. If you have any questions about this stuff, you can reach out to me, questions@databoards.io. If you want this file, there's a link to download. If you need some help creating this file or, creating insights or analytics or KPIs in general, you can shoot me an email, or there's a link to my calendar as well. But if not, that's all I got for this one, and I'll see you in future lessons.